Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, student friends, family, and everybody on the internet, thank you for joining us and welcome to episode 85 of the Teacher Emilio podcast. I am your host, Emilio, and today, guess what? We forgot third round, round 3. We talked about bringing someone back, and here we've got Max. Welcome, Max. Oh, sorry, look, I already said your name, so, now everyone is going to know you.
That's good.
This is the third time you're coming to the podcast, so thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. First time on camera.
That's right.
That's exciting.
So slowly leveling up. And this time, well, basically we talked a bit about how to get to, come to Australia, meet new people.
Yes.
I think it's episode 3 or 4, so please go and check it out. And if you have already watched the episode or listened, there you go. Max is real. There you go.
Real person.
Exactly. After COVID and all that, because this happened in between the lockdowns.
That's right.
Now it's like, okay, cool. So it is real.
Yes.
And the second time we talked a bit about culture differences in terms of meeting Aussies, getting to make new friends.
Yeah.
And this time it's also culture, but it's a different spin because we had an excursion. And I still remember that you said an interesting comment. You said, because Emilia, Colombian students, everything with Latinos is a negotiation. And I thought that was so funny, so cool. And I thought, and then I think you mentioned it, or I said we should talk about it. And I said, you know what, maybe then we just have to, make it happen. So thank you for joining us.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Good to be back for the third time.
And well, I hope you're as excited as I am because this is a pretty cool topic. It's something that we deal on a daily basis. Students deal with this, and it is basically cultural differences. Another plus of having you is that I'm sorry, I'm gonna tell the audience a bit of your surprises, is that Max can speak Spanish. And if you don't know about it, you have to go back and listen to this episode. So Max, I'm just wondering how is what can you tell us as an Aussie who has lived in South America that can speak Spanish? Any cultural differences or things that you notice with your Latino students?
Many cultural differences. Many. And especially related to the classroom. I guess. It's kind of obvious, but you don't realize until you start teaching and maybe even studying in another country that the classroom is very, very different in each country. We have a lot of students from all over the world at the place where we work. And it kind of makes sense. You go, wow, these students are so different. So to take an example, in South America, it seemed like the classroom was quite an informal space. And from that, my experience was I did an exchange in Chile. So that was at a university level. So not high school or elementary school, but the classes were very much like a lecturer giving some information, and then the students were free to question the teacher or say, why is that correct? Or could you explain more about this? And it was very kind of two-way, kind of interaction. It was like you could always ask the professor something, why is this happening? Is that not happening? And it was very like you were kind of friends with the teacher, but they were still obviously respected, the professor or whoever. Having also worked in South Korea, I can tell you that that's very different, because in South Korea, it's like the teacher is the boss, and the student is just like a glass that you're filling with water. We're filling with information, and that's it. So the student wouldn't even ask a question, wouldn't dare to be like, are you sure about that? Or, can you show me why that is? That would never happen.
Yeah, because it's almost like breaking so much respect, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it makes perfect sense that when we have students in our classes in Australia, we get everything. We get students from all over the world, and you can see in the students they're all a little bit, they're very different depending on where they're from. So, for instance, a South Korean student, it might be, it's considered very awkward for them to even make eye contact with the teacher. Is a kind of a thing that's not done.
It's funny you mentioned that, because what I would do is I would look at them and then I don't know, like smile or do this. and then students would be like,
Yeah.
freak out for like a second. It's maybe because they're not used to it.
I can tell you now, they would definitely not be used to it. It's very different. But that's why it was so different. The idea of a negotiation, you know, everything being kind of flexible, right? Was
Tell us more.
Yeah, well, this was very Colombian kind of thing, probably across South America. It's just, as you know, the majority of South American students we have in Melbourne are Colombian by a long way.
Yeah, but wait, quick disclaimer. Don't cancel us. Be very careful with what you say because a big portion of my audience is from Colombia. We
love
you guys.
Colombia, great place. Shakira, #1. I've never been to Colombia, right? Never in my life. And already, because of all the students, I know a lot of places. I know Bogota, Medellin. I know about arepa con quesito, bocadillos.
Oh, nice.
And I've never even been there. I
You
know
have-
all this stuff.
You have to try the hot chocolate with
Yeah.
cheese.
Yeah, I heard about. What's that called? Doesn't that have some funny name?
Ooh, maybe. Look, you got me on the spot. I don't know. Maybe just chocolate con queso. If you're from Colombia, let us know. What's the name of the chocolate? I think
Yeah,
it's
there's a great dish called mondongo.
Oh, nice.
It sounds fantastic.
Bro,
Just the
you're like
name.
half Latino.
I know, man. It's just all these Colombian students, you know? So, yes, that's the disclaimer. Love Colombia. The Colombian students, the best, right? Really, really great. And what was noticeable there was that, you'd say, okay, this project is due on the 15th. And in a normal class, that's it. The project is due on the 15th. But the Colombian students will come and they'll say, hey, teacher, I'm working very hard these days. And the 15th, that's going to be difficult. And you're like, well, start earlier, I don't know. what are you telling me for?
I imagine like your Aussie side of things is like, mate, that's not my problem, mate.
It isn't my problem. I was like, that's not it. I didn't realize that clearly it kind of is a little bit like, well, could you allow me, a few more days or something? And, I suppose I could. But it is important for the viewers and listeners to know that is not standard practice in Australia. Very much not. And also it's and to go even further the other way is that a student from Japan or Korea would the due date is the due date. It cannot be changed for nothing.
Yeah, that's almost like missing a flight.
It's worse than missing a flight. It cannot be changed. It's locked in, So that was very... it's just a cultural difference that people need to be aware of. I think if I was living and working in Colombia, I'd really like that approach to things, but it doesn't happen in Australia like that. If something's set on that date, it has to happen no matter what.
Probably like in uni, especially like once you get into like a bachelor's, master's, or maybe a diploma, maybe that may change a bit.
Possibly, yeah. Maybe it's more, they kind of know that you have things going on in your life. But I think the difficulty for us is at a university that we have very tight timelines we have to hit. Like if we don't have all the exam scores in, then we can't publish the reports. Then the students can't graduate. Then they can't go on to their masters, and then the whole thing's a disaster. So
true.
Yeah, so that's kind of from our perspective. But that's why, to me, it was so crazy to have students say, "Hey, next week I'm a little bit busy. I'll just come like maybe 1-2 hours late to the class." You're like, well, just don't come if you're that late. Who cares? Don't worry about it. So it's just very different.
But I would say, giving merit to that person, it's better to come for an hour than not coming.
I absolutely
and I think
agree.
that's my Latino side of things.
That's true.
It's like, you might as well go for an hour.
Yeah.
It's better to be an hour late than not going.
That is true. Yeah, it's just a totally different perspective. Because an Australian person would be like, either you want to be there for the whole class, or you don't, and that's it. It's just on or off. And whereas a Japanese or Korean student, again, to stereotype, but they would just not attending is not an option. Unless you're in hospital, you could not go.
True. It would need to be extremely bad, like you said.
Extremely bad.
You would need to be. You need to be in hospital or something.
Correct, exactly, yeah. Have some, I don't know, some very, very good excuse, put it that way. But yeah, I think all these things are, is there a right way? Is there a wrong way? I don't think there's anything wrong with any of them. I just think it's very, very, very different.
Something that I would say to defend my people is that there are many times where we've had mixed classrooms, and I've noticed that from both sides, like the Latinos would be like a bit more serious, or they would not tone down, but they would adjust. And on the flip side, say for students, for example, students from like, in this case, we've talked about Japan, South Korea, or maybe other parts of Asia, they would maybe relax a bit more, if that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I've noticed only teaching classes of just Japanese or just Chinese, just Koreans, but when they see like a Latino doing it, and I think it also depends on how you react to it.
Yeah, of course.
Because then a part of me is like, okay, I'll laugh a bit, or no worries.
Yeah.
Or it would be like, okay, we've got 5 minutes before going on break, and then it's like, oh, teacher, come on, 5 minutes, and then a part of me is like, I'm supposed to finish. My Aussie side of things is like, no, I finish at, for example, I don't know, 9:30.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I finish at 10:30. And then it's like, it's just 5 minutes. But it could also be Australian to say, yeah, no worries, it's just 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
And some of them go, oh, can we go 5 minutes early?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's a good point. You often think, well, who really cares? Maybe it's more, if you have something important to do in those 5 minutes, I would keep them. But if it's just something boring, maybe go 5 minutes early. The funny one I always had is when I'm teaching evening classes, because the students in the evening classes are mostly South American, mostly Colombian. And it's amazing that they even come to those classes, because most of them are working long shifts, cleaning, working in restaurants,
or construction.
And after that, you would be so tired. So the fact that they even come at all is a miracle. So then
I know, and shout out to you.
Yeah, shout out to that, because that is really impressive.
Yeah.
Really impressive. I don't think I would do that.
Imagine your time in Chile. You work in a restaurant,
I know,
8 hours.
Class.
Exactly.
Impossible.
In another language.
In another language, impossible. It just couldn't happen. So, respect to them. I think that's very, very good.
Kudos to you.
Yep. Excellent. And so I think that's something that also should be kept in mind. It's very, it can be very exhausting working those long hours, and then even more exhausting sitting in a classroom all day. So maybe letting students go a little bit early, that's probably not the worst thing ever.
Now that you mentioned this, this brings me back to teaching evening shift. And as an ex-international student, sometimes I would let them go 5 to even 10 minutes early, max. And I would hear other teachers not necessarily complaining or, like saying bad things about them, but it's like, oh, this person is not paying attention, blah, blah, blah. And like, basically scolding them or like complaining to other teachers. But then I've been in certain situations like defending them. It's like, is what you just said. It's like, mate, he woke up at 7, working from 8 to 5. He came in 10 minutes late and he's half awake, he's like a zombie, half dead. So, and it's tough, putting on top of all that is another language, another country. So I don't know, it's tricky. But I do see why some teachers from Australia or other countries, or any person really as a teacher, would be like, mate, you should be on time, blah, blah, blah. But don't you agree with me with the fact that we could be a bit more lenient, I would say? Maybe in those evening classes for those students who are,
Yeah, definitely. Well, I suppose it depends. It's difficult because I know from a school's perspective that they have to... a lot of it depends on the very, very strict visa laws. Because once you go from, like, it's not just, are you learning English well? It's more like the students have come to Australia with a student visa. And so there are things like if their student visa course requirements aren't being checked and they aren't coming to class, then that's a problem with the Department of Immigration, which are people who are not very friendly and they're quite angry and you don't want to mess with them, So I think a lot of English schools are very concerned about that because they want to be accommodating to the students. They understand they have they can have very difficult working situations. But on the other hand, they don't want to, if they get in trouble from a Department of Immigration or from some education thing, then the school's closed and there goes all the money.
True, and all of a sudden it becomes very serious.
Exactly.
That's a fair point.
I think their argument would be that if you're here on a student visa, the number one priority has to be study because it's not a work visa, right?
True.
So I think that's their opinion. So the difficulty for students is trying to get the balance because for many students, it becomes work number one and study second. And then it becomes work number one, girlfriend second, study third. And then it becomes work number one, girlfriend second, party number three, and then study fourth. And then it just gets lower and lower.
Now that you say this, talking about negotiation, I've been in a situation where students are coming a bit late and they ask me, am I absent or not?
Yeah.
And then it's like, I don't know. Are you?
Yeah.
Have you had anything?
Of course, all the time. That was a very new thing that I encountered because, like, it's just so different. I mean, I guess I was when I was at university, I was always late to everything, but they didn't check attendance at university, so it didn't matter. Usually I think important thing for the listeners and the viewers to understand is that usually the teacher is given instructions by the school.
Thank you that you said that, bro.
That's it.
It's not us, it's not us.
No. And we don't want to lose our jobs. It's quite simple. If we don't follow the rules, we don't get employed,
Yeah, and
it's
that's
important.
Yeah, and that's a very fair point,
Yeah.
because someone listening might be thinking, oh, these teachers are mean or this or that, and it's like, sometimes a part of me is like, look, no, you're absent, but it's exactly what you said. We are sort of in the middle between
I know.
students coming to class.
That's it. It's a very annoying position to be in. And also, to be honest, I would love a system where they just remove the teachers from the equation. So that means that, let's say the school says, class begins at 9:30. If you're later than 9:30, you are absent, right? Let's say that's their rule. Okay, very strict, but it's up to them. Somebody else marks the roll. Somebody else marks attendance. Maybe the head, maybe they get a security guard to stand at the door, and just as soon as it's 9:30, it's all stopped.
Or like having a camera, from
Camera,
like 9:30's attendance. What about this? There is a hidden camera.
Yeah,
and at
nice.
9:40, a photo is taken.
Nice.
And then that's it.
I love that idea. I love that idea. It's probably in violation of several privacy laws and security laws, but you know what? Who cares?
Exactly.
If we don't have to mark the roll. What was the other one? There was, I had a great idea. All students should carry some like ID card and they swipe in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's like a dystopian.
Yeah, some Big
Dark-
Brother
yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
He's like,
Yeah,
let
full
me
Big
check.
Brother.
Let me check the system.
That's right.
Carlos,
That's
you
right.
didn't swipe.
Yeah, that's right. Carlos, you didn't do your homework, bro. Detention.
What about with the homework? Because that's another thing. Like, I've noticed that sometimes, not always Latinos, but it could be, like you said, it's not always true, but it sometimes happens. What about when they don't do the homework? Is that something that you have noticed, or like, oh, let's check homework? Have you had any problems or negotiation issues with other things, or is mostly?
Well, the thing is, I don't give a lot of homework. I really don't really give any homework.
No wonder the students love you, man.
That's true.
Okay,
I never thought about that.
I'm gonna copy that.
Yeah, I actually didn't think about that until I just said it. That does make sense. No wonder they like me. But usually what I mean is, if a student, what we do in class is enough to get better at English. But outside, you're free to do whatever you want. If you want to get better at English faster, do some homework. If you don't worry about it.
Nice. This reminds me of the analogy of sports, and it's like you could go to the gym and obviously train. Is that the only thing you should do? Well,
That's
no.
right. There's
I mean,
more.
you could go to the gym, train, but then if you have macas every now and then, it's not the end of the world. But then if you want a six-pack, maybe that's not the best choice.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. I think if you, going to class is just one. It's like the base level. It's the basic package. If you want to go advanced and then pro, you got to add these little things in there. Do all those annoying things like watching Netflix in English and changing your phone language to English. It's annoying. You don't want to do it, but every little thing kind of adds up.
Exactly.
So, in terms of homework, I don't know. I couldn't tell you anything about homework. I don't know.
Usually I would say I would just have homework as a joke. It's like, oh, have you done this? No, that's your homework.
Yeah, nice. That's a good idea.
And then it's, I guess, also a good way to start a conversation.
I had
classes.
that one too. But again, to go back to other examples, because like we're saying, in Australia, we have a lot of students. Usually the students in the evening classes are working all during the day. So are they going to have time to do homework? Probably not. I mean, they might, but probably not. So I don't feel like, okay, you need to do this page and this page and this page. You're like, come on, that's crazy, right?
And it might be a bit unrealistic from us to
Very
expect.
unrealistic, yeah.
It's like you finish at 9:30, you probably get home.
Yeah.
I mean, let's say that you live in the city. You get home at 10.
Yep.
You probably have a shower, maybe dinner, or maybe preparing lunch for the next day.
Yeah.
If you go to bed at 11, I mean, when are you going to do homework?
Exactly. It's crazy. So I think it doesn't. Yeah, in that case, I don't think it really, it's not realistic to ask for it. It would help. There are other things students can do. If you're working night classes, if you're having night classes and working during the day, just, listen to like this podcast.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
And subscribe to YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. Subscribe to YouTube. Tell all your friends.
Exactly. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
That, I mean, it could help not only with your skills, but maybe with, English exams or whatever you're doing.
Of course, definitely.
So there's been, I mean, I cannot say, but listening to the podcast equals
success.
Exactly.
Yeah, guaranteed.
So there you go. So and thank you for your support for those that have been watching.
Exactly. Yes.
Hey Max, I have to touch up on something that it's extremely funny yet fascinating to me every single time, and it is, as you probably can tell, like I don't look very Japanese, or let me put it this way, I don't fit the typical Japanese
stereotype.
Exactly.
Correct.
And actually right now, well, I told you about this before recording, like I've got this class full of Japanese students, and I'm asking myself, I decided to wait up until the final speech. Let's see how the students react. But it's crazy because they talk in Japanese in class sometimes. This is a class of only Japanese students, right? And knowing Japanese helps a lot because you could say something, a joke, an activity, and you hear someone saying, I don't know. And then I just go blank for 2 seconds and I go, should I repeat? Yes, teacher, please repeat. So it helps a lot.
That's good.
Has that ever happened to you with Spanish? Because
of course.
Because, I suppose, I mean, obviously, that's the tricky thing about Australia, that anyone could speak anything. Anyone could be Aussie. I mean, based on looks, anyone could be Aussie.
Anyone could be Aussie.
Anyone could speak
perfect English or any language.
Exactly. So I obviously for you could be a surprise. Like, in talking about stereotypes, I hope this doesn't get me cancelled. It's like you would fit the typical white man / gringo stereotypical.
Absolutely.
And then it's like, oh wow, he speaks English.
Yeah.
Sorry, he speaks Spanish.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to you, or have you had any funny moments like that in class?
Definitely. And you know what? Originally, or for a long time, I thought I would be very strict, only English in class. And I thought I would keep it a secret that I knew a bit of Spanish. Big secret.
Oh,
because in my head, I thought, well, it's going to be so bad to have... I didn't want a class that was half English, half Spanish. I didn't want a Spanglish class. That was just my head. I don't know why I thought that. I thought it would be bad. I don't know. Because then when I went into the class, if you have a class full of Spanish speakers, it's going to be Spanglish anyway. So I was like, well, I'm not too concerned about that. But what I didn't know, because the students realized that my level was not fantastic, right? It's not fluent. So they can't just speak their normal... Like, they can't speak to me like they speak to their friends, because I won't understand it. All the slang and all this
teacher.
stuff. Exactly, yeah. And I'm like, oh, sí, muy bien. Yeah, excelente. So instead, they end up, it's been much better. And I tried it the last maybe few months or something when I've had these 9 classes, is to just be honest with my level of Spanish and that it is quite low. And instead trying to think about what the equivalent is, because luckily with Spanish, it's quite similar to English. So when we start teaching students, especially lower level students, about things like the present perfect tense, it's so hard to explain just using just English. And it's a very hard concept. But as soon as I said to them, well, you have it in Spanish. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, look, here it is. And they go, oh yeah. And so then in English, we have all these, like in the textbook, there are all these questions like, should you use the present simple here, or the past simple, or the present perfect, or the past continuous, and all these questions. In English, it's so hard because to explain that and to think about it, and you're saying, no, only for completed actions in the past, or actions that were completed that were happening at the same time, and it's so hard to explain. Whereas if I say, I'm just thinking like, you know it, you know all of these rules. It's 90% of the time it's the same in Spanish. So actually nowadays I've been using more Spanish. It's coming up and up and up. It's creeping in more and more and more.
All right, and it could be a way, I suppose, to use it as a tool, right? It's almost like the debate with AI. It's not like just don't touch it at all, but more like, okay, what can I do with this thing that I've got?
Exactly. And the thing is that you know that so much of Spanish and English is similar, which is it is a big advantage. And maybe because in the past I thought that it can be negative if you try to do too much of that English to Spanish thing, because then you end up saying things that are crazy. Like my embarazada story. Yeah, that happened to me. I'm sure that happened to other people as well.
Yeah, you're like, oh, disculpa, estoy embarazado.
That's right, exactly. And then, everyone's looking at me like, what? That's not good. Exactly. So that's one where, so I thought if I teach all the classes using Spanish equal to giving just straight translations, that's not good. But maybe just using it a little bit to show, just explain something that's quite difficult.
And I think it also depends on the group, right? Because if you've got, a group where you've got like half of them speak Spanish, then that's where you as the teacher have to really, navigate it in a way that it's not like other people complaining. Saying
well, that's right, exactly. Because that's not fair. I mean, imagine if, dear listener, dear viewer, imagine if you were in a class and you were sitting there and you were one student out of 20 and you were the one person who didn't speak that language. And all of a sudden, the teacher's just speaking everyone else's language. That wouldn't be good. You would be angry. You paid all that money, and everyone else is getting VIP English class, and you're getting some, dirty leftovers.
I know, and I've noticed that this is not the best example, but here I go. I've noticed this with like teaching students from like Vietnam. I mean, I'll give you this cohort, mainly Asia, but anyways, Vietnam, Thailand, Japan, and South Korea. Mm-hmm. So I would say to them, I'm from Venezuela. I'm from an island called Margarita. And then everyone laughs when I say it's not the drink, it's not the pizza. But then they have nothing to relate to that, right? It's like I'm from an island. They could imagine, I don't know, they could think that I don't know, grew up cutting coconuts. I don't know, right? They may not relate to that. So I just say to them, I mean, I could say to them, if they're more advanced, I could say it's similar to Cairns. It's similar to, Kangaroo Island, all those places. But then they haven't got that. So I just tell them, and this is just similar to what you said, like as a way to click. I remember saying to, for example, the Japanese students, I look at them and I go, oh, I am from Okinawa in my country. And as soon as I say that, it's like, oh, boom, click. But then I noticed, I mean, the first time I did it, I left some people out and I was like, oh, bad teacher. So then say with the rest of the cohort, it's like, oh, with the Koreans, I am from Jeju. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, yeah. And the same thing with Thai. I'm like, guys, I'm from Phuket in my country. Or like with the Vietnamese, I'm from Phu Quoc in my country. So it's all the same example. But,
that's a good idea. That's a very good idea.
And that way is exactly what you said. People don't feel left over. And
no, that's right. But that is much easier for places than for language. Because I would have to learn present perfect in Thai, Vietnamese.
Yeah, no. Good luck.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I could. I should stop being late, do more homework.
Yeah. But, on a flip side, I'm just wondering, have you had a situation where a student talks to you only in Spanish? From them knowing that you speak Spanish?
No.
Because maybe that could be the fear of, I mean, maybe like the backside of, okay, I don't want to use the two languages. Could be the fear of, I'm in an English class using Spanish all the time. Yeah. And I mean, obviously, that's not productive. Right?
Yeah. But you know what? And exactly. Maybe that was my fear in the beginning. Maybe that's what I was worried about happening. That it would just end up with the students just asking me questions in Spanish the whole time. And no one would ever speak English. That would be bad. But actually what happens is they can hear that my level of, like, I'm obviously not fluent. I'm not a native speaker. That's just a fact, right?
This is just a perfect example of Australian politeness and being,
Come on.
Being humble.
Okay, yeah, well, anyway, we'll see about that. But they definitely hear that and they're like, okay. So they go, so this guy's willing to try, he's speaking a language that he didn't grow up with. So they go, okay, So then it's then they think, well, I guess I'm speaking English. This is a language that I don't know, but there's no excuse. Because a lot of the time I think people are thinking, well, I can't say I'm too shy, or I'll just speak in Spanish or speak in my first language. And yeah, if they can see that I'm speaking a language that's not my first language, it's a language I started learning when I was 20, how old was I? 20, 19, 20, something like that. But anyway, I was an adult, right? So, yeah, I think that's much. So actually, for me, it worked really well. For you, on the other hand, you did grow up with it, and you look like you grew up with it.
Maybe.
Oh, I don't know.
But it's funny because that's what I was gonna tell you. For me, it's the opposite. But before I tell you this funny story, I wanted to touch up on one more thing because you mentioned the embarazada example. I guess a good thing of knowing Spanish before you go into the class and teach is that you can also help people with false friends.
Yes.
Just recently, I was helping a student pass IELTS and PT.
Nice.
Remember, if you want to pass IELTS, let me know. Get in touch. Email me. Leave me a comment. Message me on Instagram. But anyway, back to the story. This student was telling me something, right? And then speaking practice. And then the person wanted to say something like warned. But this person said like, oh, he advised me.
Nice.
But in the context, I was like, he advised you.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I heard that, I thought, this person wants to say avisar.
Exactly.
Like to let someone know.
That's
So I was like, advise is not avisar.
I know.
In this case, it's like warn. Oh, warn.
Yeah.
And then it became, and it's like it was that, oh, I am not embarazado. It was that aha moment for the student. Yeah. So I think that's a pretty cool thing also.
That is so true. That is, and exactly, because originally I could only think of it as negative. Because I was only thinking that what will happen is the students will only speak Spanish. They won't learn any English. And I'll just end up teaching some weird kind of Spanish class, right? But instead, I didn't realize, like you said, there are a lot of advantages. And I only realized that once I started teaching students who couldn't speak Spanish and I couldn't speak their language. You know what I mean? Like I would have a student from Cambodia. I can't speak Khmer. Well, a little bit. A few words. Enough to get in trouble. But yeah, and so then I'm like, wow, this is so frustrating. How am I going to explain the, past perfect continuous to a person from Cambodia? Yeah, exactly. It's really hard. Whereas to a person who speaks Spanish, or for that matter, Italian or French, who have the similar construction, you can just go to the board, and say, this in your language? Well, this is it in English. That's so easy. So it's good to use that advantage.
I would also say that sometimes the fear of, knowing Spanish would be this. What I've noticed in my case, funny enough, one time I had someone who got angry because I didn't reply back in Spanish. But that was a very specific case. And a part of me is like, oh, come on. We've got like 12 students.
Yeah.
Like half of them are like, for example, let's say half or 3 from Colombia, 3 from Chile, 2 from Brazil, 2 from Taiwan, 1 from Thailand. It's like, I can't speak Spanish.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this person, it was an elementary group, to be fair. So it's like obviously a bit more challenging. And for them, it's like, oh, come on, man, just tell me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, okay, but if I tell you, that doesn't look good on everyone else.
Exactly. Yeah. I agree. I think that's a very difficult position to be in.
But for me, it's more like this. Most of the time, I would say 9 times out of 10, the closest I would get to use Spanish in class would be profe. Or like when I get close to them, it's like, have any questions? It's like, profe or Emilio. And then it's like, is blah, 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 blah the same as this?
Yeah.
And it's just yes or no. It's more, it's for example, teacher, is advice like avisar?
Yeah.
No, is warned.
That's
okay,
right.
Boom. And then saves so much time.
I agree. I think that's a big advantage. And you know what? Every time I teach one of these classes, so many of those false friends come up every time. And I can never remember a good example. My classic one is the embarazado one, which is, like that's a classic. And the avisar one is a really good one. But there are so many. And I can never remember. Have you done a podcast about the false friends?
That could be. Yeah.
That's next time.
There we go.
See you on the next show. But yeah,
we're gonna get a huge list.
Man, there's so many because I just keep forgetting that they exist, and then and there's some words that don't translate very easily or don't translate 100% correctly.
I know.
What is so annoying?
Yeah,
like the languages are they're like that close.
It's
and just not quite.
I know, this reminds me, I mean, one that it's quite tricky. I mean, so good that I've got an English teacher with me, native speaker, is sensible and sensitive. It's
Oh my God.
it's such a fine line between the two.
Who did that? Like, was that just someone having a joke? Just like, hey, let's make this word like it's exactly the same, but let's make it different in both languages. Who does that? That's evil.
I know. Tricky.
I know.
But overall, it sounds like you're getting good feedback from students, or like you're getting this positive response.
Definitely, yeah. I think usually in the night classes, I'm coming in to cover somebody, and usually for the students, it's just so different that they have someone who knows some words in Spanish. So I think they really appreciate that for the night classes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. What else? Yeah, I don't know.
Have you ever? I think I mentioned that earlier, that I pretend not knowing Japanese.
Yeah. Well, I did.
Did you pretend not knowing Spanish?
Correct.
Because that
in the
could
beginning,
be useful.
yeah, I did. Yeah, I pretended I had no idea. And then I was very strict about, no, I'm not going to say anything. But I realized that was so stupid in the end. I think for me, it was very, very stupid. Because for you, it's obvious that the students could just be like, in straight Spanish, and just be like, "Oi, Emilio, what are you doing? You know, like, come on, man. Yeah. Don't be stupid." But to me, they cannot do that. You know, they still have to be like, "Excuse me, teacher." You know, they either have to choose. They make their Spanish lower to my level, or they improve their English to my level. But you know, either
may
way,
I
it's
please?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And so yeah, that's been really good. The other thing I just want to say is that because, you know, we were saying no offense to Colombians, and I really mean it, because the Colombian students, we talked about a lot of the problems that they have, right? But there's so many positives. There's way more positives. The Colombian attitude, and South American in general, not specific just to Colombia, but the whole attitude of like being warm, open, so really just friendly to everybody, and like in a very sincere, very real way, you know? I think a lot of the other students are so surprised, especially when you get a mixed classroom. The best combination is South American students plus Asian students plus a few Europeans in there.
I know.
That's the best, because then you really get this like mix of, and everyone brings their best things together. So you get you get a lot of students who have been brought up in that very strict school system. They are machines at doing exercises, homework. They're so precise, so careful. And students who were brought up in a more, how would you describe it? A more social, a more relaxed, a more emotional kind of culture. They bring it out in the other students. So it's the best. It really is so good. And it's something that's really, again, you know, you only appreciate when, if you have a class of students who are only from, you know, a very strict study, all by myself class. And you think, man, they're so quiet. Like, I wish I had some fun students here, just like yelling and having a party.
Now that you said that, I totally agree. It's so cool how having that blend of cultures, and I've seen it both ways. Like, I've seen my Asian students being a bit more Latinos, like, come on, teacher, 5 minutes. And he's like, yeah, 5 minutes. And he's like, yeah. But on the flip side, it could also be like the Asian students being like, it's break time, let's just study half an hour, for example, you know.
Definitely.
And then they would be like, let's just study, and I'm like, whoa, that's
and
pretty...
that's why I know, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, the best way to learn is in the mixed classes. Every country is mixed up together. That's the best one.
True. But I mean, I would also say big shout out in general, because all that, I mean, obviously every culture has challenges, but it's exactly what you said. Like, what we experience, it's not easy, just to say the least. And I feel like all that process and all the hard work and grind does build up resilience, and that helps out. It's crazy, you know, because as I'm saying this, I've had students that I've met, you know, from like 3-4 years ago. Some of them already have PR, some of them, and it's all, you know. And I remember they would tell me like, oh, it's really hard, this and that, but I'm getting PR, or I'm gonna stay here for good, or I love this country, and you know, things happen.
That's great.
But also the attitude, what you said. As soon as you said about the attitude, I remember I had a classmate from Hong Kong, and my friend asked me, why are you always so happy? And this is like right before almost like the worst crisis in the country, like 2015, 2016. It's like, Emilio, why are you always so happy? Your country, I Googled Venezuela and man, it's horrible. It's almost like I want to cry. So I think pushing that mix of like positivity of, things will get better type of thing, or like working hard
Definitely.
comes across.
Definitely. It's very important, isn't it?
And
Very
you're right.
important.
I would go as far as saying that, I agree. It's not only Colombia, but because you guys are, such a huge community, but a part of me feels Colombian as well.
You know what? Like, I've met more Colombians in Melbourne than I ever expected to in my whole life.
There you go.
I didn't really know that much. I heard about Colombia and I'd seen like it's really famous for the natural beauty. It's got those beautiful, what's that place called? I don't know. I'm going to ruin the name. But yeah, let's not put ourselves on the spot. But anyway, it has beautiful natural places. Yeah. Natural wonders. Amazing.
I think it's something like Colombia and Costa Rica have got like 80% of the world's biodiversity, or like in the rainforest. It's something crazy.
I know. It's unbelievable. Well, basically now, to all my students and to the good people of Colombia, I went from knowing nothing or almost nothing to now being like, well, I have to go. It's on the list. It's very high up on the list. And, I don't know. If anyone wants to pay for me to have a flight over there, thanks very much.
There you go. So if you sponsor the podcast so we can record in Colombia.
Exactly. Oh, that'd be great, man. How fun would that be?
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. It's a good idea, right?
And with another thing I wanted to mention, when you hide the Spanish, how do they take it? Because like I said, we both don't look, say for example, me with obvious, like you said, with Latinas it's obvious.
Exactly.
Or like say, my Portuguese isn't great, but I'm a good conversational, and sometimes it's like when I get a student from Brazil, teacher, do you speak a bit of Portuguese? And then it's like, sí, un poquillo.
Nice.
Or like un poco. And then it's like, I always say I speak Portuñol. Because it's like...
Is that the combination?
Exactly.
Nice.
So it's like Spanglish, but with Spanish and Portuguese.
Awesome. That's cool.
So I would always say that. But with Japanese, many times they get like really shocked. Because it's like, taka, 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 Toyota. And then it's like, wow.
Yeah, that's cool.
How does that happen when it comes to...
No, I never... It's more fun with Japanese and with Korean and something like that, because you really get that like that.
I think they were gonna freak out tomorrow.
Yeah, so good, man. Yeah, that's gonna be great. You should film it and show, let the people who follow you see it, because that'd be really cool.
Oh, look, that's my homework.
Yeah, exactly, man.
But I think that'll be good
tomorrow.
Yeah, I just get the tripod for the speech.
Yeah, exactly. That's a funny idea, though. I think that'd be really cool. But I think the students, for me, when I they were never that shocked with Spanish, because I think it's less surprising. People from South America, they know that some, and Australians know a few Spanish words. It's like the number one language that people are like, oh, I want to learn Spanish, or maybe Italian or French.
Yeah, true.
Feels like if you ask any Australian, this is a homework for your listeners. Go and ask any Australian person. And I guarantee you, at some point in their life, they have studied either French, Italian, or Spanish. Guaranteed. And I guarantee you as well that they're probably not good at any of them.
I would add up to that, they would probably know mi casa, su casa, or,
exactly.
Or por qué no las dos. Do you know por qué no las dos?
Yeah, of course.
Can you tell us about, because some of them might be listening.
Oh, they don't know it. Okay.
How do they know por qué no las dos?
Well, yeah, good question. Well, it was from a famous TV commercial. It was from, it's really stupid. All right, I'll tell you. It's really stupid. It was a TV commercial, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or something. And it was for Australian people love to eat Mexican food, or I guess kind of Tex-Mex food for dinner, which was this tacos thing. So they sold this tacos kit at the supermarket. And the idea was, in every Australian house, there is a strong debate, a strong argument between which is the best, the hard tacos or the soft tacos. One is like a tortilla, the other one is fried, the one, the hard one, right? The crispy one. So in this TV commercial, It's basically just taking an Australian idea and putting it into Mexico. But it's this scene in Mexico where there's like this big fight in this Mexican village, and they're all like wearing sombreros, like doing Mexican wrestling and stuff. And then they go, one's part of the village, like, hard tacos are the best, crispy tacos. And the other one's like, no, the tortillas, the soft one is the best. And they're just fighting. And then this little girl just says, ¿Por qué no las dos? And she's got one and one. And the whole village is like, yeah, what a hero. And that's where that came from.
I get a feeling that for a lot of Latinos, that could be the equivalent of put a shrimp on a Barbie.
Yeah,
mate.
yeah, definitely.
Because I've heard ¿Por qué no las dos before? I didn't even know, so thank you for telling us.
Yeah.
Now you know if someone says to you ¿Por qué no las dos?
Yeah, you can look it up. I think it's on YouTube.
And the funny thing is that I've had people telling me, Spanish, ¿por qué no las dos? And I'm like, okay, it's cool, but it's so strange because it's
really
extremely
strange,
random.
yeah. Because the stupid thing about that, well, every language has it, right? So that's not uncommon. But the stupid thing is that it's not even that useful. You're like, could you not at least learn to say like, hola, me llamo Max? That's so much more useful.
I
and
know.
Yet nobody would know that.
It's almost like, I don't know. I was going to exaggerate, but it's almost like you learn English and instead of like, oh, hi, nice to meet you, it's something like square kilometer.
Yeah, exactly.
So like,
that's
when
right.
are you going to use
I know.
it?
Some insane, very specific kind of thing. Anyway, it's very, very weird. I don't know why it's so popular.
Talking about that, it's time to break the comment section and the internet. I have to ask everyone, hard taco or soft taco? Max, what about you? Why don't you go first? Be careful, okay?
Hard taco, crispy taco.
No.
Yeah, it's the best.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I can see my Mexican friends screaming. I'm
Well,
sorry, guys.
I mean,
I'm
you
sorry.
know, come on.
I didn't know, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm very sorry. No disrespect to Mexico. Hey, you know what? I'd love more Mexican students because 2 years ago during coronavirus, I had so many students from Mexico. It was really great. Really interesting place and super, super cool.
Oh, look. That's the other one. Maybe we need to get more funding.
We need the
and
tour.
then, exactly.
To
So,
Mexico.
ooh,
I have
the
to
tour.
show you Chile. You know, you can
exactly.
come back to Santiago. Santiago, they call it.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
It's like getting the 3 boom, boom, boom.
That's right. Exactly. That would be cool, huh?
It's almost like, well, I mean, it's not as, I mean, the distance is bigger, but it's almost like doing a tour in like Darwin.
Yeah.
Then you go to Alice and then
it's a
down to
great
Melbourne.
idea. That's such a good idea, man. We should do it. Well, send your money this way. And if you have some houses that we can stay in Chile and Mexico and Colombia, that would be great.
Like a cafe to, to get a setup like this.
That's right. Yeah. And to get some food, of course.
Well, Max, now that obviously it's been a fantastic episode, we're getting a bit close to the end.
Mm-hmm.
It means we're having a good time. By the way, thank you so much for joining us so far. And don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, like the video, subscribe, the notification bell. You know what you have to do. Please do it. It helps. But also, I'm just wondering for those students, thank you, for those students or those people, that are in Australia learning, maybe coming to class, maybe even thinking of coming to class. We've touched up on this, but maybe give us the 2024 edition. What could be some tips? I mean, we've talked about this, like obviously, having balance, meeting your classmates, and, from maybe recent experiences, anything you would recommend? You put me on the spot, man.
Yeah, you have. I don't know. Well, I guess, the most important thing probably is to attend. Number one, most important, attend all your classes. I know nobody wants to hear that, but that is actually, the most important. And the other one is, I would say, come into the class and everything with an open mind, or as open as it can be. Not always thinking, this is how I do it. I'm going to do it that way. You really have to come in with like you're going to meet somebody from a completely different perspective. And I think that's the best thing.
I would say, you won't believe this, it's crazy. No script. I was going to say, be curious. Because by being curious, you basically getting to what you just said, like you get to learn the different ways people do things.
And you know what? Sometimes you go, often when you meet somebody and they're doing something different, if you look at it and you go, oh my God, that's so weird, and then just go home, that's not good. If you look at it and you understand it sometimes it's better. In fact, many times it's better than what you were doing. And you're like, whoa, I'm going to do that.
Exactly. And then you try it. Or it could simply be, I mean, I'll give you one example is with rice. Sometimes students go, oh, the best way to cook rice is this way, this way.
Yeah.
I think that's another debate. Rice cooker or the pot.
Yeah. Next episode.
But, the thing is sometimes when I see students getting caught up in these mini arguments, I'm like, guys, let's just go back 2 steps. We all eat rice. Or like we all like rice. We sometimes put a bit of salt, for example, the Japanese, maybe they don't put anything. Other countries, maybe they put a bit of spices and whatnot. At the end of the day, it's rice. So, we all like the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost like, I'm going to bring another debate. It's almost like futsal versus, soccer field, football. I don't know.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's the same thing.
I know, exactly. Like, we just enjoy it. You shouldn't go looking for a fight, should you? Why don't you look at the common space,
True, look, and I think by being curious, you just open up more chances to communicate, to practice. And in terms of language learning, it would be like, oh, why do you do this in your country?
Exactly.
Or why is this way?
And
but not coming from, just being, as you said, coming with an open mind.
That's right, exactly. Like, very quickly, I'll just say there was a great part of the class when we had a great mix of students one time, right? Students from Colombia, Brazil, Mexico, Thailand, Vietnam, China, Japan. Like it was the dream class.
Wow.
All these mix of everybody, right? And we had a very fun class where people could explain the grammar a little bit from their country. It was like the end of the term. We had a free class. And whenever the particularly Japanese and Korean students get up to explain their grammar in their language, it's so interesting because it's so different from English and very different from the Spanish, Italian, French, romantic languages. It's like, it's just mind blowing. And when you do that, you listen to it, you're like, whoa, that's so different. And you think, how can you make any sentences with that? But then they give you a few examples and you're like, wow, that's so much better. Like, I guess in Japanese, you would know. They don't use articles, do they?
No,
that's so good. Because when I thought about it, and I'm like, wait a minute. Like, how much time do we waste every day trying to say, no, in this case, you say a basketball, but in this case, you say the basketball.
I know, and it's funny because I often get people asking me, how do you know what's what? And then it's like, you just know.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's I guess the same thing when you get people from, let's say Asia, and they go, why is the table female?
Yeah,
and why is the floor male?
Dude, that's my question.
There
Every
you
time
go.
in Spanish. It's
Next
so
episode.
Yeah, exactly.
La mesa is la mesa because.
So annoying.
But you just I guess every language has got its own little things.
Yeah, I know. And that's why open-mindedness is the most important thing.
Boom. Look, what a good way to wrap up the episode. And thank you, Max, because we touched up on so many different things.
We did.
Needless to say, I gotta continue pushing in the podcast. Hopefully we get sponsors and things so
Definitely.
that we can do that tour in South American
tour. It's a great idea.
If not, we may record again in Australia.
Oh, yeah, okay. We'll see. Make sure you like and subscribe and everything.
And not only thank you for joining us, but thank you for being part of this episode. And if you were on Spotify, thank you for listening because, if you are on Spotify, you could be one of those that, you have seen how the podcast is growing. So your support means the world to me. Thank you for joining us in your commute. Maybe, you went for a walk. Maybe now you could be on the couch. I don't know. You could just play this video. So whatever the case was, thank you so much for joining us. This was episode 85. Don't miss me too much. I'll see you next week or on the next episode. And well, Max, like I said, we will probably organize for round 4 in the future.
Perfect, man. A pleasure.
What was it? I completely lost. The False Friends. I think that would be such a good one.
That is going to be good, yeah. But, is it going to be a 3-hour episode?
Oh, yeah, maybe. that would be special.
Okay.
Cool. Well, Max, thank you. Thank you, guys. All the best. Take care, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take care, and bye for now. Boom.